This conference
Thank
will
you.
now be
So I wanted to
recorded.
start on Kashrut, and it's interesting because when I first got married, I did not yet have smicha, right, rabbinic ordination. So I hadn't really sat down and learned the laws of kashrut, because the laws of kashrut make up a big chunk of the tests for rabbinic ordination. So I hadn't quite done that yet, and I had a, and once I was no longer in my parents' home and no longer in a dormitory, going into the dining room and eating whatever they gave me. So once that we had now that I had our own home, so questions came up, and we always had a lot of questions. And once I started learning the halachot, I felt very silly about many of the questions that I was asking, because once you have the parameters, so then things fit in much better and much more easily. So first of all, why is kashrut so important? Now, of course, all the mitzvot are important, as we discussed this morning. Right, every mitzvah is a means of connecting to God. Every do positive mitzvah is an act which helps to forge a connection, and every don't mitzvah is or prohibition is an act which would cause a buffer, a separation. But what might be unique about the mitzvah of kashrut over and above the other mitzvot? Why might kashrut be particularly important and impactful? David?
Three times a day.
Okay,
It's a daily
okay.
lifestyle.
All right, we eat 3 times a day. We nosh in between, right? We graze. Okay, that's a possibility.
Kind of separates us from like everything else, like everyone else, everything else. Like
Okay, all right. So it is a Jewish practice that helps keep us somewhat insulated, right? We can't just go for a business lunch with this or that. So it sort of keeps us somewhat insulated. Anna?
Almost like not the opposite, but the other side of the coin. You're part of the community. So if you want people to come to your
Okay.
house, and you
I
have
remember one of
to,
the first things that I did over here in Irvine, right? And that was, I think, to a great degree that you wanted to be able to host people. Beautiful, yeah, right. So kashrut helps us to right. It it sort of insulates us from the non-Jewish world and communitizes us. And there's no such word. I like to make up words. It communitizes us with the Jewish world. Alex, doctor.
Also, it's one of the few things that if you do it wrong, it affects other people in your household, like your children.
Okay, okay. It right. It spreads out to others also. Good, Natalie.
discipline.
Okay, it right. It certainly teaches discipline. A story that I shared before, but it's a great story that a woman, a religious woman, was by her kids at the checkout of the supermarket, and her kid is having one of those meltdown moments, and the mother whispers something in the kid's ear, the tantrum stops. And there was another mother I show. There was another mother. Welcome to come in. You have to be in the bleachers. There was another woman, a mother, parent, father, I don't know, another parent who was watching all this, and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I just have to ask you a question. What was the magic words that you said to your kid? Like, how did you just like nip that tantrum in the bud? Like, wow, please share your secret with me." And she explained, well, we're Orthodox Jews. And I explained to my child that it's not kosher. And at that point, it was a moot. It was moot, right? The kid knew that no matter what's going to happen, I'm not buying this, and therefore it was end of story. Yeah, so it certainly teaches discipline, right? But there are many things that teach discipline. Esther.
I mean, I was gonna say we are what we eat, and I feel like it's definitely a lot more cleaner.
Okay.
Also, it's very spiritual, like with the whole mead and milk.
Okay.
It's,
Okay. So let's. I think that is something that is unique to the mitzvah of kashrut, right? Right. We all started off at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds, and now we're all a little bit beyond that, right? a number of multiples, right? We're not going to get into details here, but a number of multiples, right? And so, what are we made of? We are constructed of the food that we eat, right? So when you say you are what you eat, we are literally, right? Every cell, every part of the body that grows, that develops, right? It is taking, doctor, am I accurate in this? It's taking food that we're eating, and it is, hey guys, it's taking food that we're eating, and it is processing it, and then utilizing that to build cells. And we are just billions upon billions upon billions of cells. So there's an interesting, the pasuk we had last week's parsha, not this past Shabbos, but going back to where we spoke about kashrut. So there the pasuk said, "Lo titam ubahem," do not become impure through it. V'nitmetem bam, and you will become impure through it. But v'nitmetam is written chaser, without going into detail, right? It could be read if one didn't have the dots and didn't have the Masorah, the tradition that tells us how to read it, we would read it vidnitam temba, which means you're going to get clogged up. Right? Now, this is not talking about clogged arteries, right? But we're talking about a spiritual clogging, right? Because what moves us spiritually? We hear certain things, we see certain things, we read certain things, right? It's our body taking in these events, these things going around. That's what moves us. And sometimes two people could hear the same thing, and one person was like, "Wow, that was so inspiring," and another one says, I woke up as soon as he started speaking." Right? So for one person, it could be like, wow, right? And a factor, I'm not saying the factor, a factor in that is, what is these words of Torah, what is that passing through? Right? If it's passing through a cheeseburger ear, right? Or boar's head, deli eyes, so then it's going to affect. So what is unique, right? Everyone made excellent points, but I think is particularly unique about kashrut is that no one else walks around with the mitzvah or the prohibition that they've done. I do this, I put on tefillin. I don't become tefillin. I pray. I don't become prayer. Right? I don't, another thing that I don't do. I don't know. Right? I don't become that. But with my eating, I become that. Another possibility, I mean, we had some very nice ideas. Something else that struck me is the very first mitzvah and the very first prohibition was food related. What was the very first mitzvah?
don't eat from the tree.
Actually, the very first mitzvah was
Eat of everything that
eat from all the trees of the garden. I would say it reminds me of my grandmother. Essen mein Kind, eat my child. All she wanted when I and my brothers would come, just wanted to watch us eat. That's all she wanted to do. Essen mein Kind, eat my child, eat, eat. The first command was Mikol Gana Eitz Tochal. From all the fruits of the garden you shall eat, but from the Eitz Hadat, Tov Ra, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the middle of the garden, that you shall not eat. But everything else, eat, eat. So the very first to do and the first don't was all evolved around eating, around food. And therefore, I like to say that when we go into a grocery store and we start checking, right? Oh, is this kosher? Is this not kosher? And we're going to go through which things do need and which things don't need. And I implore everyone to download the free CRC kosher app, right? Everyone who's been in the Jewish organization, you all have it already,
Yes.
right? CRC, the Chicago Rabbinical Council kosher app, right? And it's wonderful. And it tells you, right? It lets you know, just, I was talking to someone today or yesterday, and the person asked me, Rabbi, do apricots draw, now fresh fruit, vegetables, right? Grains that are just plain grains, right? Rice, barley, chickpeas, all of those things, if it's just raw, unprocessed, does not need kosher certification. That which comes out from God's earth is kosher. The only thing we need to be careful with is bugs. Bugs are not kosher. So there you have to be careful which things you're buying and know how to properly check it with bugs. So apricots, of course, are fruit. That's fine. How about dried apricots? So we looked it up. Apricots, except without a hechsher. Apricots dried, except without a hechsher, with no additional flavors. Right? No additional flavors. So you're not going to have any issue with that. Okay?
But
But-
what about chemicals? They put all kinds of who knows what in these things.
If it doesn't list anything on it,
Oh,
apricots dried are good.
So like the sulfur or whatever, that's
Yeah.
additional.
The preservatives.
So
yeah.
if it will list additional things, so then that could be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay? But otherwise, right? And certainly the grains and all those things that I get them Wholesome Choice in those big bags over there, right? All of that is, I'm sorry,
Those are
not processed. They're cleaned, they're sifted, whatever they do.
That's the question. So that's not considered processed.
That's correct.
Like when it's drying, whatever.
Correct.
And the heat, it's not.
Correct.
Not
Correct.
contaminated with.
Correct. Correct.
pigment.
That's what I'm saying. CRC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful tool that is given. Right? They have medicine there. They had a Pesach section. They have koshering, non-food products. They talk about tefillas kelim, immersing vessels. It is, they even have the Slurpees and the Starbucks section.
Do they have like question answer with AI, like to describe what you did and they tell you?
That I don't know if they do.
I mean,
That
that's
I don't
probably
know.
not too
Yeah.
far off, right?
So it all began, so to speak, right? The very first mitzvah to do, the first not to do, is all based on food, okay? And therefore, this is something that we do quite often, right? And we are it. Yes, Cheryl.
What is that word you said that without the to go so whatever the
Vinitamtem, which means you will get timtum halev, right? You get clogged up, right? That it's not. It doesn't pass through.
so what's the word
The
without
actual word, the way it's read is vinitmetem, which means a lashon of tameh, impure. But this is vinitamtem. Okay, so that is just an intro as to why kashrut is of such extreme importance, right? And I would also I was saying before that when you walk into a grocery store and you check the things that need to be certified are certified. So first of all, keep in mind that when you go to the middle of the grocery store, right? So almost any item they have there will have some with a hechsher, with a certification. You want pancake mix? There'll be pancake mixes with extra. You want cereals? There'll be cereals. There'll be hot cereals. There'll be cold cereals. Right? There'll be candies. There'll be right, whatever you buy there in the middle, crackers. Right? I would say probably 40 to 60% of the pasta. Right? Sauces might be a little more difficult. 40 to 60% of the general items in a store are kosher certified. It's just a matter of picking this one instead of picking that one. You get to the perimeters, well, you have the fruits and vegetables. Like I said, barring the issue of insects, you're clear. You get to wines, cheeses, chicken. Right? That's already there's no 40% anymore, right? There you have to make sure you're either getting from the kosher store or a lot of the stores, Trader Joe's will carry kosher chicken and kosher meat. Right here, Wholesome Choice carries, right? But whenever we're going there and we are checking, so what we're doing is we are reenacting our Garden of Eden moment. Because the sin at its core in the Garden of Eden was not recognizing that I'm in God's world. I always like to say, you get invited to someone's house, you're invited, you're welcome, you sit down at the table, partake of any of the food, start opening up cabinets. Yeah? Inappropriate, right? Why is that? I'm just going to go upstairs and check out the bedrooms. Oh, no, you're not. Stay right here at the table, right? Why is that? Because it's not your house. You're in someone else's house. So the reason why Gan Eden, the reason why we were put into the Garden of Eden, and the tree that we were not supposed to eat from was put into the Garden of Eden, right? Well, if you don't want them to eat it, don't put it there. That's not the point. The point is, it's there so that you recognize this is not your garden. This is not your world. This is God's world. And every time that we go into a grocery store and we check to see if something is kosher, we are having our Gan Eden, our Garden of Eden moment, and we're recognizing, hey, I'm in God's world over here, and therefore I act accordingly. I go accordingly. Okay. Let's start. Yes, Janet.
So is Kosher Information Bureau with Rabbi Adams as appropriate as CRC?
Yes, Rabbi Idolitz is wonderful, excellent, right? I don't have his app. I had some problems getting on, and then I kind of got hooked on the CRC. To my recollection, what he does is he lists all of the different certifying agencies that he recommends. Okay, CRC, right, does that also. They have a part called they have agencies. Yeah, they have agencies. Not finding them. Yeah, they have agencies. But what I really appreciate about them is listing which things need hechsher, which things don't need hechsher. Now, if it's just the same, I'll buy the one with the hechsher. I'd rather give the business to the company that has an active interest in being kosher certified. But if there aren't options, or if it's more expensive, right, then I need to know what needs a hechsher, doesn't need a hechsher. That's where for me CRC really is a tremendous resource. Okay, so let's move now into some of the areas that come up, and let's understand the concepts and understand some of the applications. Number one, we have a concept called bitul. Bitul is something becomes nullified. Okay? Something non-kosher mixes in with something kosher, it can become nullified, in which case, b'te'avon, as I say, bon appetit, right? You can go ahead and partake of it. It will not disqualify, it will not make non-kosher. Now, we use the term treif. And it's really a borrowed term, and we use it in a very, very imprecise manner. But we'll use it. Okay? Treif, oh, that's treif, right? That's not kosher, that's treif. Treif actually comes from the word taruf, treifa, which means torn. Right? And that's talking about a kosher animal that has not, either it has some internal tear, rendering it non-compatible with life, or it wasn't properly shechted, slaughtered, right? And if the knife has a little bit of a nick in it, then it doesn't slice, but it will tear. Okay? Rendering it a treifa, right? So we use that term, right, in a very general way. Treif is non-kosher. You say, oh, that chazer, that pig is treif. Well, no matter how you shechted it, it wouldn't have helped, right? So treif is not really, whether the knife had a nick or not is really irrelevant when it comes to a pig, right? So, but that's a term that we use. So there's the concept of bitul. Bitul is that something becomes nullified, something non-kosher got mixed with something kosher. It can become nullified, and then you can go ahead and eat. How much, to a certain degree, that will depend on the situation. One, yes, Jan. Libatel v'lahavi hefker, right? I'm nullifying. Yeah, in that statement, we're declaring it ownerless. Libatel v'lahavi hefker. Actually, the ownerless is in the word hefker that we say. Yeah. Okay. So for certain things, bitul berov is sufficient. One falls into two. Majority is good. One is bad. It's batel berov. Okay? We don't apply that. And we say, oh, great. No, we don't apply that all that often. Okay? That will be in the case where we have cold, meaning it wasn't cooked together, similar tasting food. Okay? But an example where we would use that is you go into Costco or Trader Joe's and you want to buy some fish. Okay? Does fish need a hechsher? Yes and no. It depends. For fish to be kosher, it must have fins and scales. And we have learned on Shabbos, if it has scales, it has fins. So as long as you find a piece of fish that has a scale on it,
You can pick it with your hand.
you know that it is a kosher fish. Now, in certain grocery stores, you're going to run into problems that, well, they just cut the crab legs, right? And now they're working on the lobsters, and now they're working on your kosher fish. That's going to be a problem, okay? But if you can get them to do it with a clean knife on a separate thing, then you're okay. That's when it comes. But if you're buying packaged fish, if they say this is cod, this is flounder, then you do need certification, because not just in the kosher Jewish world, but in the greater fish world, there is a lot of counterfeit or counterfish stuff that goes on, because you can substitute a much less expensive fish as a much more expensive fish, and it's very hard to discern. So therefore, by those things, you would need a hechsher. If you want to buy, let's say in Costco, you want to buy the tilapia, the frozen tilapia, that will need to be certified. But if you want to get salmon, there we have a wonderful, wonderful allowance. You can buy salmon basically anywhere. Why? How do you know it's salmon? Because of the color, and only kosher fish have that hue to it, have that pinkish, orangish color to it. So therefore, if you see that color, you know it is a kosher fish. There can't be any counterfeit. Okay? Now the bagged salmon in Costco has an OU on it. Beautiful. How about the fresh salmon they sell in all of those on those styrofoam pads that they sell it, right? Can you buy that in Costco? Can you buy the salmon at Trader Joe's? Yes. Now, why? What might be a concern and why is it not a concern? Whichever.
What if the fish died? It died by.
Okay, we don't shecht fish. Okay, fish, right? An animal to be kosher needs to be shechted, means slaughtered, and there are two simanim. There's the kana and the veshet. There's the trachea and the esophagus. And for an animal to be kosher shechted, most of those two tubes need to be cut. For a bird, most of one of those needs to be cut. Fish, and for any Yemenites, grasshoppers, right? Which are, some of them are kosher min haTorah. That's why I served you in candy. Right? Some of them are kosher min haTorah. However, we don't have the tradition to understand which yes, which yay, which nay. So we don't eat grasshoppers. Yet there are Yemenite communities who do have that tradition and they will eat. But for us, fish does not need to be slaughtered. But what might be an issue with the fish?
Well, I thought you just mentioned it because we don't know where they're cutting it.
Okay, good. So when I'm going into a regular store, so they had taken this fish and working on it, that lobster working on it, and now the shrimp and working on it, and now the salmon and working on it. There we have a lot of cross-contamination. How about in a Costco and a Trader Joe's? So there we can rely that they're not cutting a lobster and then cutting an octopus and then cutting a salmon. Okay? When they're cutting salmon, they're cutting hundreds, thousands of pieces of salmon and packaging. Salmon packaging. In our world where people have this allergy and that allergy, they have to be very, very careful. And anyhow, it just makes sense, right? You want to mass produce something, right? So you keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And let's say that when they switch their run from the lobster legs to the salmon, let's say they didn't wash it well. So maybe the first 1, 2, 3 might have some of the grease or whatever, the juices of that non-kosher. That's 3 out of how many?
Is that for
Yeah.
So is that the
Yeah.
school as well?
Right. So that would then turn into bittul, right? So and anyhow, when we get our fish, I think most of us rinse it off and then start to work on it. Okay. So therefore, you've got, chances are there's nothing there. If there is there, you've got your bittul, right? And there, I don't even need 60. I probably have 6,000 to 1. I don't even need that. Really, I can have 2 to 1, and that will be sufficient. And we rinse it off, and therefore we are fine. Okay? Yeah, Alex.
Does the cold knife apply to this example, that they're cutting it with a cold knife?
Okay. So one of the things we'll get to is that the way that anything is imparted from one to another is typically through heat. So if Alex is asking, being that it's a cold knife, right, there really won't be a problem. But that's not really correct. When we say a cold knife is not a problem, and we'll come to all these things, if I mistakenly took a meat knife, a knife from my meat section, and I use it to cut cheese, or I took a dairy knife and I used it to cut through some deli, right? So there, it's a clean knife. What's my concern? That it might have, whatever it might have absorbed from its usual usage will now come out and will affect, right? I used that for a cheese omelet this morning. Now I'm cutting some, now it's clean, but I'm cutting some deli, so the cheese that was absorbed will now be expelled onto my deli, okay? That only happens, that's only a concern when there is heat involved. When it's cold, it's not a problem. But if I still have some cheese on it, and now I'm cutting my deli, the fact that it's cold is not going to help me. There, I've got what's called mamashut. I've got some real substance over there, right? So the concern over here is there might still be some shrimp juice, right? When they started to cut the salmon, and therefore the fact that it's cold is not going to be a factor. Is not going to help. Yeah, Anna.
What's considered a clean knife? So if in one of those stores they wash the knife, is it a clean knife?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a kosher clean knife. It's just a clean knife.
Correct. As long as it's cold and
Cold
it's
and
clean.
washed.
Correct. Yes. Okay. Now, once we have liquid, or once we have things that were cooked together, then we need to have the famous shishim, which is 60 to 1. Okay? Now, yes, Dave.
Before you go into that, all the things you said, why is tilapia need to be textured?
Because it's a white fish, right? It's a white fish that has scales. It's a kosher fish. But how do we know that it really is tilapia and not something else that might have gotten mixed in or counterfeited along the way? Yes,
And
Janet.
tuna has some. No, go ahead.
So you were a general proprietor, I get that, but, and you know, people might tend to fudge or cheat, but a store that says it's a kashrut store and has supervision, wouldn't they have Yirad Hashem enough that if they say it's this, that it is this?
If you're going into a kosher store, so then you're okay.
Even if the packaging doesn't have it.
If they're selling their stuff, if it's something that they packaged, so then we rely on them. Yeah, we have to. We have look. Not that there tragically haven't been scandals, okay. Sadly, right? But we have to. We rely on one another. Yeah.
So like if there was a fresh fish case that they said was bass or cod, and then
At OC Kosher, you have nothing to worry about, right? At the kosher stores, Glot Mart, yes. At any of the kosher markets, there you can rely on them. You can rely on them. Yes. Okay. Now, actually, another case of this batel barov, right, is even before we get to the shishim, to the 60. Let's say you have a piece of silverware, right? Knife, fork, spoon, right? That got mixed in with others, and then it got put back into your drawer, right? Got put back into your drawer, right? So you don't know, right? First of all, typically, if you find a dairy knife in your meat drawer or meat knife in your dairy drawer, typically it wasn't necessarily used, right? It it's it's like Seinfeld's sock sneaking its way out of your dryer somehow, right? It it got mixed up. It got mixed up along the way, you know. But let's say I know, this spoon got compromised, right? And then someone saw the spoon on the counter and they put it into the drawer. I left it out in order to kosher it. And I know usually it doesn't work that way. Usually people don't put things away, they leave things out. But this is one of those rare times where actually it got put away, right? So in such a case, again, we would apply this idea of bitul barov, right? That it becomes nullified, right, by the majority, and you are good to go. When things are heated, cooked together, or where they are of a different flavor, and therefore they impart ta'am, flavor, there we need to have 60-to-1 ratio. Why? What's the magic of this 60? What's the idea of 60?
Dominant, maybe because more.
Okay, but why? Yes, it's more, but why? Why 60? What does 60 do? Well, majority could be a lot less than 60, right? Right? So actually, when the Shulchan Aruch discusses it, it says you should give it to a non-Jewish chef and have him taste it. Do you taste any milk in my chicken soup? Some milk splattered into my chicken soup. Do you taste any milk in my chicken soup? And that fine chef, no. Right? And we're good to go. Right? However, a more practical way of determining it, which halacha says, is 60, meaning 60-to-1 is where the taste will have become nullified, right? Gone. Right? And it's very interesting that we use the term 1/60th in other places also, right? Famously, the Talmud says Shabbat, the Sabbath, is 1/60th of Olam Haba, of the world to come. It's a taste of the world to come. Now, why is it 1/60th? Because that is that inflection point, that tipping point. Meaning, Shabbos could be Olam Haba. It's the world to come. I get to sleep a little bit later. I get to spend time with my community, spend time with my family, spend time with my friends. I'm not worried about the phone and the texts and the this and the WhatsApp groups and the emails. I'm not worried about the bills to pay. Stock market is closed. If it's open, I'm not watching it. I could take all of my earthly pursuits and put it on hold, right? And Olam Haba, the world to come, is where all of these earthly pursuits and responsibilities are lifted off. If you heard the term, a person was niftar, that's a term that's often used in the Torah world when a person passes away. What does niftar means? It comes from the word patur. The person is now exempt, right? The person is no longer bound, right? All the obligations we have in this world. So Shabbos could be a taste of the world to come. Or for some people, Shabbos could be hell. When can I get on my phone? When can I turn on the computer? Right? When is the stars coming out already? Gosh darn it. Right? Gosh, now it's so long. Are you kidding me? Right? So it's 1/60th, right? It's at that tipping point. right? It could be heaven, it could be hell, right? But that's what 1/60th is. 1/60th is that borderline case that comes up.
Is
Right.
something about your sleep and the soul, 1/60th of the soul, or is that like?
I think we say sleep is 1/60th of death. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just talked about that. It's not at 180th.
No, the term we, as far as I know, the term we always use is 1/60th.
1/60th, your soul leaves and goes roaming, and that's where you do most.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so practical questions that often come up, that can come up in our kitchens, right? In my, I've been a rabbi for a while. Let's just say, in the years of being a rabbi, no one has called me up and said, Rabbi, I have a kashrut question. Oh, what's that? Well, a pig walked into my kitchen, right? You know,
Slaughter himself.
yeah, that's not the issue that we have, right? The issues that we run into is something from milk and meat splattered this, splattered into that, or I used a dairy on a meat or meat on a dairy, or I did this one time. We went shopping, and we went this time. We shopped in Walmart, which we usually don't do, and I bought noodles and I brought it home. And Natalie says, "Rabbi, are these noodles certified kosher?" And and they weren't. So sometimes we might make a mistake. You know, good honest mistake. You know, one of the reasons why we have our wonderful Kiddush crews, and we double check the things that they buy. They're all God fearing. They're all well intentioned. They all mean to buy, right? But we all also make mistakes. And I'm telling you the story that the rabbi also makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. So it could, right? That's why we need to have a second pair of eyes on it, right? So it could happen that you bought something and it wasn't kosher, and now it got mixed in with other things, right? So that is where these issues come up. Yes, Rachel.
What do you do if you accidentally bought something that wasn't kosher? Like, do you toss it? Do you give it away to somebody else?
No, so if you can return it, so return it. If not, we all like Jose over here, right? You know, find a person who's not Jewish, right? Who could use it and appreciate it, and yeah, why throw it away?
There's also a lot of food banks. and,
Food banks, yeah, plenty of places, Look, for a non-Jew, there's nothing wrong for a non-Jew to eat it. You know, let them enjoy it, right? If I can't, let them enjoy it. Yeah.
In your example, though, you did cook the pasta or whatever, right? But
Correct.
if you did, because in
Okay.
your example, it's not a bitul, right? You just noticed it and you put it away.
Correct,
Like you didn't
correct.
have to worry about it.
Correct. But let's say, right? And so let's say if I cooked the pasta in a pot,
Yeah, what happens to it?
right? So unless we're going to say that you've got 60 times water to pasta, which is not the normal way of cooking pasta, then you have compromised that pot, and that would need to be dealt with. You know, but let's say, right?
You put it in the soup.
Let's say I put a little bit of it into the soup, right? I put some of those noodles into the soup, right? So then I would need to fish them out of the soup. But will it compromise the soup?
No.
Well, it depends. What does it depend on?
How many?
Right? Do I have, right, 60 times volume of soup, that whatever else is in there, soup, vegetables, chicken, whatever's in there? Do I have 60 times the volume of that versus that which went in?
So the volume, not the weight.
Correct. We go with volume. Do I have 60 times that? Then I can enjoy this soup, right? If I don't, then the soup has become compromised, right? A little bit of milk splatters, right, into my chicken soup. How much splattered? How much chicken soup? 60, we're good to go, right? More than 1/60th. I don't have the 60 to 1, then we've got ourselves a problem. Okay?
Eyeballing this 60 to 1, like how do you really know?
I know this is a 5-quart pot, it's a 3-quart pot, right? Typically, one could yeah, if a little drop fell in there, right?
Or.
There's a little bit of math. Yeah.
That's why I became a psychologist.
You put in about a cup of the noodles versus 5 quarts, which is still not, so that would still be compromised, but you have at least your ratio.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the case where the pot is compromised, do you have to rekosher it with boiling water or?
Okay, yes. So when something becomes compromised, so then you need to kosherize it, right? You need to kosher it, okay? And the way that is done, right? And that also comes into this case a little bit, right? So you would want to dip it into a bigger pot of boiling water, okay? You would also want the pot of the boiling water that you're dipping it into to be 60 times that which is going in. Because otherwise, that which comes out can compromise. But there's another issue that we will come to later on, and that is that it's called notain tam lifgam. Okay? And that is anything that it gives out has no potency. Once something has been absorbed for 24 hours, it loses any potency. Okay? So therefore, my non-kosher spoon, fork, pot, whatever it is that I am immersing, I would wait 24 hours before immersing it. And then I no longer have the concern that it's going to give off stuff and that's going to further complicate that which I immersed it into. But we're going to come, I don't want to get, like, once we have all of these different concepts, it'll be a lot easier to make the applications. Yes, Anna.
I think it's about this concept. So if I use a meat spoon, whatever, in the dairy soup, it'll be less than 60th, right? So the soup is correct.
Okay.
But
So,
the utensils are separate.
okay. So if I took a dairy spoon to stir my meat soup,
Yeah.
okay. So now there are 2 things I need. Well, there are 3 things I need to be concerned about. What's the status of the soup? What's the status of the pot? And what's the status of the spoon? Okay. So let's combine some of the things that we're jumping ahead a little bit.
Oh, okay.
If that spoon hasn't been used for 24 hours with hot dairy, then it's not going to affect the soup, because anything that might come out of it has no potency. It's pagum. If I have used it within 24 hours, then I'll need to ascertain that the soup is 60 times the size of that spoon that got stuck in there. Okay? The spoon has been compromised because that spoon, which had absorbed dairy, now also has absorbed meat. That spoon has been compromised, and it needs.
If you have 8 cups, 1 teaspoon is 1/60th.
I'm sorry?
If you have 8 cups of liquid, then 1 teaspoon would be 1/60th.
So could be. It could be that the volume that 1 teaspoon holds will be 1/60th of the amount of ounces you say. We have to look at the whole spoon.
Well, that's different though.
I'm sorry? The spoon is compromised no matter what.
Yeah.
The spoon is compromised because it had absorbed dairy. Now it has absorbed, right? But the soup is fine. And if the soup is fine, the pot is fine. If the soup is compromised, then the pot is also compromised.
I have a question about the spoon. If it's metal, how does anything get absorbed into metal?
Okay. So halacha views it that metal and glass and wood will absorb and will expel. That it can absorb and it can come back out. That's how halacha views it. Okay? Now, yes, Batsheva.
Does intent in the contamination makes a difference?
No,
It's,
no.
So
Either it happened or it didn't happen.
So technically, I can buy non-kosher salt because it will always be over 160 ratio.
You can buy non-kosher salt.
Salt, yes, or any condiment.
Okay, okay. So a concept that will come to any stuff for davening is ein mevatlin isur lechatchila, meaning this whole idea of bittul of nullification is if it happened, but I can't say I've got 300-ounce soup over here, and 1/60th of 300 is wow, right? 50, no, 5 ounces, right? Let me put in 4 ounces of milk. It'll make my soup that much more creamy because, right, adding milk to soup makes it creamy. Let me add 4 ounces of milk. I'm under my 1/60th threshold. I've got, Rabbi, the most amazing soup. A little rabbi trick over there. No, you can't do that. Right? If things get mixed in, then we could apply bittul, but we don't go ahead and cause a bittul of issa. That correct. That we're not. So if that's what you asked, if that's what you meant about intent, right? So yes, right. But whether I intentionally use a spoon or accidentally use a spoon, that's irrelevant. They would just have to look at the facts. What went in, what didn't go in. Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here, and we will pick up. Good. Yasher koach, everybody.
Thank you so much.
All those online, good seeing you.